Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. The benefits of the Great Recession have been almost completely overlooked by the media. So I want to point out what those benefits were and why we desperately need another recession very soon. During a recession, prices drop. The prices of housing, food, the prices of stocks such as those in the New York Stock Exchange, indexes like the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ. The price of energy also drops, like gasoline and many other forms of energy. For example, national housing prices dropped 35%. This is also true for global food prices. They dropped 35% during the Great Recession. Stocks in the New York Stock Exchange saw their prices go down by more than half. Gasoline prices also dropped by 3/4. This is one of the great bargains we had. You were paying $4.11 a gallon in July of 2008. By December, you were paying only $1.61 a gallon. Now, unfortunately, because recessions produce high unemployment and high rates of foreclosures and evictions and lost wealth in a lot of 401k portfolios because of the stock market going down, the media sensationalizes this, and then there's pressure onto the central planners, such as the federal government and central bank, to create inflation, to pump it into the economy as stimulus to eliminate the recession or bring it to a premature close. Lower prices help the poor. Lower prices help people who previously could not afford the goods and services and products they needed to maintain their standard of living. It also allows people to jump into markets such as the stock market in order to accumulate wealth. But you need the price to be affordable. Otherwise, people are locked out. Wealth is created when the price of stocks, real estate, commodities, and currencies bottoms out, as what happens during a recession, if it's allowed to run its course. We did not allow it to run its course because the central powers came in with inflation to pump everything up. But we still had a lot of the recession did take place, and so prices fell, and people were able to jump in the market and start accumulating wealth. For example, during the decade, homes saw their value appreciate 33%. For gold, it was 70%. For silver, it was 100%, meaning it doubled. For stocks in the Dow Jones and S&P, we saw appreciations of their values leap above more than double. And for the NASDAQ, we saw the stocks more than triple in value. So if you invested in any of these assets at the beginning of the decade, you were going to make money. You would even double and possibly triple your money, which is the whole point of investing. It's to make money. You don't make money by buying high and selling low. You make money by buying low and selling high, or buying high but selling far higher. So this is what you would have been able to do if you had gotten in the market in the early 2010s into these assets. Nothing appreciated like the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, which jumped out 650 million%. That is not a typo. In 2010, a Bitcoin was 1/3 of a penny. So you could have bought one Bitcoin with, and really we don't even have a denomination smaller than a penny. So what a penny would have gotten you is 3 Bitcoins. And you would have been able to sell that Bitcoin for $19,500 in 2017. If you had spent $1 in 2010 buying Bitcoins, you would have been able to accumulate almost $6 million in wealth by 2017 if you had sold them at the end of that year. $1 would have turned into nearly $6 million in 7 years. That's the greatest rally I've ever heard of, certainly during this decade, if not in the entire history of American investing. Now, if you look at household incomes, the gross income grew 22% during this time, from $50,000 to $61,000. That looks good, but remember, gross income is not real income. Gross income is your before tax, before inflation income. So it is not the money that you actually pocket. In order to get that, you have to deduct inflation. So during the decade, inflation hit many items that Americans commonly buy. Food prices, for example, went up 15%. Homes went up 33%, as we mentioned. Healthcare went up 24%. Electricity up 12%. Higher education went up 29%. It inflates more than most things because of government programs that finance it. And then you have transportation, which went up 24%, and the laundry and dry cleaning services also went up 20%. If you average all of these items up, you get an inflation rate of 22% during the 2010s so far. From 2010 to 2017, just as gross income went up 22%, so did inflation. It kept pace perfectly with gross income, which is a terrible thing. The reason the inflation rate is not worse is because of the productivity of the oil industry using a technique called fracking a whole lot more, which allows oil companies to extract oil under the ground previously unrecoverable. And oil prices did rise after the Great Recession, going up to $3.96 a gallon in 2011 and $3.74 a gallon in 2014. These were the highest oil prices in the post-recession era. And yet, prices came down after both peaks because of the productivity of the oil industry. If not for this level of productivity, we would have seen a higher inflation rate than 22%, and what this would have meant is much more damage to real incomes. But even with productivity in the oil industry and lower oil prices as a result, we still have to look at the numbers of gross income versus inflation. When you take the gross income and you subtract the inflation, which is easy math, this is 22 minus 22, you're going to get a real household income growth of 0%. So during this decade, when people said that the economy was doing well and it was growing and incomes are rising and jobs are being created, keep in mind, real household income did not budge. When you hear people saying that incomes have stayed flat during this decade, they're talking about real incomes, not gross incomes, because the Census Bureau publishes gross income numbers every year, and it's been growing ever since 2012. But what's the inflation rate? Inflation kept pace with gross income, meaning that it destroyed all real income. So we did not make any progress in actual income during this decade. And this is a key reason why we need a recession to occur very soon. Because we start seeing headlines such as this. In the U.S., wage growth is being wiped out entirely by inflation. This is an article that was published last year. The growth in wages was not wiped. It wasn't taken out partially or mostly, but entirely by inflation. So we saw no growth whatsoever in real incomes, despite all of the rosy news that you have heard. You have people simply not paying attention to the fact that inflation that began in 2008 and 9 because the central powers wanted to end this recession, that inflation is now coming in and has been coming into the market pretty much the entire decade. But we're now seeing that it has destroyed any real gains in income. This is a trend that's been going on for many years. This was published by the Pew Research Center, and the title, American Paychecks Are Bigger 40 years ago, but their purchasing power has hardly budged. It's the purchasing power that matters. It's not your paycheck. It's not your income. It's not how much money you see in terms of dollar signs on the paper. It's what it buys. This yellow line represents gross incomes over the last 50 years. This green line represents real incomes over the last 50 years, over the same period. And as you can see, gross incomes have been going up pretty much the entire time. But if you look at real incomes, meaning your after-tax, after-inflation income, the line is basically flat. In fact, the last time we saw any significant increase in real incomes was from the mid-60s to the mid-70s, which is this period right here, where you see real incomes going up. But then, of course, in the 1970s, we went off the gold standard, and by going off the gold standard, we devalued the dollar, we increased inflation, and ever since then, incomes, real incomes, have been going down. Only recently have they been kind of coming up, but over the past 40 years, real incomes are actually a little bit lower than they were 40 years ago. If you just look at how this line follows throughout the decades on this graph, real incomes today are lower than what they were in the mid-1970s, even though your gross incomes have been going straight up. It's the real income that matters. And because we devalued the money and did many other things to hurt the productivity of industry, we have hurt the ability of people to climb out of poverty. And we have also created a need for another recession to deflate overvalued assets and the cost of living. We saw what happens during the Great Recession, and every recession in particular, but the bigger the recession, the greater the impact. Prices fall, and the ability to accumulate wealth increases once the recession is over. So we need this to take place. And it helps everyone, but especially the poor, because they are the ones who are in the greatest need for accumulating wealth. I talk about in my book, Say No to Big Government, My Case for Maximum Freedom, why we need recessions, why recessions are good for the economy. There's a period of short-term pain, but it is always followed by long-term gain. And the short-term pain is the loss of wealth. It's the higher unemployment, more foreclosures, evictions, bankruptcies, but all of that is temporary. When the recession ends, we will see people who lost money during the recession gaining all of that back plus more as they get a job that will bring more income to them so that they can purchase stock, so that they can purchase assets that appreciate in value. We see everything come back and go to new highs. But we have to allow recessions to occur so that we can allow the inflation, the bad debt, the malinvestment, the high prices get washed out of the economy. And therefore, I am greatly cheering for the next recession to come, and I sure do hope it is a severe one, because it will only help this country in the long term. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Libertarian Black Man. Please follow me on Twitter at Libertarian Black Man. Purchase the book, Say No to Big Government, My Case for Maximum Freedom, where I talk about recessions and other areas of the other areas of economics to help you understand why big government is such a terrible thing for us. And we hope to see you in the next video.